For Maya Linden, a single mom working 3 jobs a day off was a cruel joke, a fantasy she couldn't afford. So when a mysterious wealthy customer asked her what she wanted most in the world, her sarcastic answer, a day off, was all the fight she had left. She never expected to wake up to a sleek black car and a credit card with no limit attached to a cryptic challenge. Show me what it's worth. What she did with that single day of impossible freedom would not only stun the billionaire who was secretly watching her every move, but would unravel a story of heartbreak purpose and a second chance she never saw coming. The scent of burnt coffee, industrial cleaning fluid, and simmering regret was the official perfume of the daily grind, the downtown cafe where Maya Linden spent 8 hours of her 17-hour workday. At 26, Maya was a master of the precarious art of juggling. By day, she was a waitress. By evening, she cleaned offices in a sterile, silent skyscraper. On weekends, she reshelved books at the public library. She was a constellation of low-wage jobs orbiting a single brilliant star, her 7-year-old son, Noah. Life was a relentless treadmill of exhaustion. Sleep was a luxury measured in minutes, not hours. Joy was a stolen moment, Noah's laughter, as she read him a bedtime story, his small hand tucked into hers on the walk to school. But the treadmill was speeding up, and Maya was starting to lose her footing. The source of her current heart-pounding anxiety was Saturday, Noah's 8th birthday. For 2 years in a row, she had been forced to cancel his birthday plans, a last-minute shift change, an unexpected bill. The memory of his quiet, accepting disappointment was a fresh wound in her heart. This year, she had sworn it would be different. She had promised him a perfect day, a trip to the Franklin Science Museum to see the dinosaur exhibit he was obsessed with. She had requested the day off a month in advance. She stood in the back storeroom of the Daily Grind, her cell phone pressed to her ear, listening to the tinny, indifferent voice of her cleaning supervisor. "I understand, Maya, but Janet called in sick. The entire 12th floor needs to be sanitized for the weekend. I need you to come in Saturday afternoon." "But Mr. Davison, it's my son's birthday," Maya pleaded, her voice cracking. "I told you when I took the job I needed this one Saturday. I can come in overnight, I can start at midnight, whatever you need. Just please not the afternoon, 6 p.m., or don't bother coming in on Monday," he said, his tone leaving no room for negotiation. The line went dead. A wave of cold, helpless despair washed over her. She leaned against a stack of coffee filters, the fight draining out of her. It was always like this. 1 step forward, 2 steps back. She had already been denied the day off from the cafe by her manager, who had put her on the schedule with a shrug and a callous birthdays happen every year. The cleaning job had been her last hope. The perfect day she had promised Noah was dissolving into another cloud of broken promises. She wiped the tears from her eyes with the back of her hand, squared her shoulders and pushed through the swinging door, back into the cafe, her professional waitress smile plastered on her face, like a brittle mask. The cafe was mostly empty, the lunchtime rush a distant memory. Only one customer remained, a man in a corner booth who had been there for hours nursing a single espresso. He was older, in his 60s, dressed in a simple but exquisitely tailored grey suit that seemed out of place amidst the chipped formica and sticky floors. He had an air of quiet, intense observation, as if he were an anthropologist studying a foreign tribe. His name was Julian Thorne, and he had come to this part of the city seeking a ghost. This neighborhood was where he had started his first business, a small logistics company run out of a rented garage, decades before Thorne Industries became a global empire. He had come back today for the first time in 30 years, trying to remember the man he had been before the billions had insulated him from the world. He was a man in crisis, estranged from his own son, who had accused him of being a walking bank account with no soul. He was looking for something real, and he had spent the last hour watching the tired, resilient waitress, a woman who seemed more real than anyone he had met in years. He had seen the flash of despair in her eyes as she came out of the back room, and the practiced speed with which she had hidden it. It was a performance he recognized, the quiet endurance of someone fighting a battle no one else could see. Maya approached Julian Thorne's table coffee pot in hand. "More coffee, sir?" she asked, her voice a practiced, cheerful melody that bore no trace of her recent heartbreak. "No, thank you," he said, his voice a low, gravelly baritone. He looked at her, his gaze not intrusive but deeply analytical. "You seem troubled." The directness of the comment caught her off guard. Customers weren't supposed to see past the smile. "Just a long day," she said, forcing a little laugh. "I see," he said. He paused, his fingers steepled in front of him. He had overheard her side of the phone call, the desperate pleading in her voice. An impulse, a strange curiosity moved him. He decided to conduct a small personal experiment. "Forgive me for being presumptuous," he said, his tone softening slightly. "But I have a question for you, a hypothetical one." Maya waited her hand, still holding the coffee pot, a polite but weary curiosity on her face. "If you could have anything you wanted right now with no limitations," he asked, his eyes watching her intently, "what would you want most in the world?" It was a ridiculous question, the kind of philosophical parlor game rich people played when they were bored. Coming from a man in a suit worth more than her car, it felt particularly absurd. What did he expect her to say? World peace. $1 million, an end to suffering. Her mind, however, didn't go to grand, abstract wishes. It went to the raw, immediate ache in her heart. It went to a little boy who loved dinosaurs and who was about to have his heart broken for the 3rd year in a row. It went to the crushing weight of her 17-hour work days and the bone-deep exhaustion that was her constant companion. A wave of tired, bitter sarcasm washed over her. She was too exhausted for polite fantasies. She gave him the truest, most painfully honest answer she could summon. "Honestly," she said with a dry, humorless laugh, finally breaking character. She looked him straight in the eye, the cheerful waitress mask falling away to reveal the weary, defiant woman beneath. "A day off. Just one. A single solitary day, where I don't have to work, where the phone doesn't ring with a boss on the other end, where I don't have to worry about the rent or the electric bill. Just 24 hours to be a mum, to be a person." She hadn't meant to be so blunt, so raw. The words had just tumbled out, a testament to her utter depletion. She expected him to be taken aback, to offer a platitude or an awkward smile. Instead, Julian Thorne just nodded slowly, his expression unreadable. He seemed to be processing her answer, filing it away. "I see," he said again, his voice quiet. He reached into his wallet, pulled out a $50 bill for his $3 espresso, and placed it on the table. "Thank you for your honesty," he said. He stood, gave her one last, lingering look, and walked out of the cafe, leaving Maya standing there, the coffee pot still in her hand, feeling strangely exposed, as if a stranger had just glimpsed a private corner of her soul. She picked up the oversized tip with a sigh. It was a nice gesture, but it didn't solve her problem. It was just a rich man's fleeting guilt money. She dismissed the strange encounter, finished her shift, and prepared herself for the difficult conversation she would have to have with her son. That night, Maya's apartment felt smaller and shabbier than usual. The conversation with Noah had been as painful as she had feared. She had tried to frame it with a forced cheerfulness. Guess what, buddy? We're going to have a super special birthday pizza night on Sunday instead. But Noah at 7 was old enough to see through the charade. He hadn't cried or thrown a tantrum. He had just looked at her with his big, serious eyes and said, "It's okay, Mummy. You have to work." "I understand." His quiet, premature maturity was more heartbreaking than any outburst could have been. The next morning was Friday. Maya woke before dawn, the familiar knot of anxiety in her stomach. It was the start of another marathon day library, from 9 to 1 cafe, from 2 to 10. She was getting Noah ready for school when a sharp, authoritative knock echoed from their apartment door. She wasn't expecting anyone. Her mind immediately jumped to the landlord, coming to complain about the rent being a few days late. With a sense of dread, she opened the door. Standing in the dingy hallway was a man in a crisp courier uniform. He held a sleek black envelope. "Maya Linden?" he asked. "Yes, this is for you." He handed her the envelope and a digital scanner to sign. The envelope was made of a thick, heavy cardstock she had never felt before. It was unadorned with no return address. Confused, she signed, and the courier departed as quickly as he had arrived. She closed the door, her curiosity piqued. Inside, Noah was watching her, his eyes wide. "Is that for my birthday?" he asked, a hopeful lilt in his voice. "I don't know, sweetie," she said, her fingers fumbling with the seal. She slid out the contents. There were 2 things. The first was a single piece of matching black cardstock. On it, in elegant silver script, was a short, typewritten message. "Take the day. Show me what it's worth. JT Julian Thorne." The man from the cafe. A chill ran down her spine. The second item in the envelope made her gasp. It was a credit card. It was made of a heavy black metal, cool and substantial in her hand. It looked serious, important. And embossed on the front, below the chip, was her own name. Maya Linden. She had never held a credit card like this. She turned it over. There was no CVI code, no expiration date, just a concierge phone number. "What is it?" Mommy Noah asked, peering at the strange black rectangle. I'm not sure," she stammered. This had to be a joke, a very elaborate, very cruel joke. Who was this man? What did he want? What did "show me what it's worth" even mean? As if on cue, her phone buzzed. It was an unknown number. Her hand shaking, she answered. Miss Linden, a calm, professional voice, said, "My name is Arthur. I am calling on behalf of Mr. Julian Thorne. He has instructed me to inform you that a car is waiting for you downstairs. He has also taken the liberty of informing your various employers that you will be taking a personal day today and tomorrow. Your day off begins now." Maya stumbled to the window and looked down at the street. Parked in front of her building in a no-parking zone was a gleaming black sedan, the kind she had only ever seen in movies. Standing beside it was a chauffeur in a dark suit. Her mind reeled. The day off. He had actually given her a day off. But this was so much more, and so much more, terrifying. The card, the cryptic message. It felt like a test, a riddle she didn't understand. "What does he want?" She whispered into the phone. "He wants you to enjoy your day," Miss Linden Arthur's voice replied smoothly. "The card has no preset limit. It is for you to use as you see fit. The car and I are at your disposal. Mr. Thorne's only instruction was the one in the note to show him what a day like this is worth to someone like you." The inside of the black sedan was like a silent leather-scented cocoon, sealing Maya and Noah off from the gritty reality of their world. Arthur the chauffeur was a model of discreet professionalism. He didn't ask questions, simply awaited her instructions, his kind eyes occasionally meeting hers in the rearview mirror. Maya's first hour with the black card was a paralysis of disbelief and fear. She held the heavy metal rectangle in her hand, convinced it was a trick. What if she used it and it was declined? What if this was some elaborate scam? "Mommy, where are we going?" Noah asked, his face a mixture of excitement and confusion. His question broke the spell. This day wasn't just for her. It was for him. It was his birthday gift. First she said, her voice gaining a sliver of confidence. "We're going to the bank." Her first transaction was not a lavish purchase, but a desperate necessity. She walked to the ATM, took a deep breath, and paid her overdue rent and electric bill online using the card's numbers. The payment went through. A wave of relief so profound it almost made her dizzy washed over her. For the first time in years, the wolf was not at the door. Emboldened, she turned to Noah, a real, genuine smile spreading across her face. "Okay, buddy. Your birthday adventure starts now." "Where to first?" "The Lego store." He shouted his earlier disappointment, completely forgotten. The trip to the Fifth Avenue Lego store was a dream. Maya watched as Noah's eyes went wide with wonder at the towering sculptures and endless bins of colorful bricks. He walked reverently to the Star Wars section and pointed to the Millennium Falcon, set a monstrously large and expensive kit he had obsessed over for months. That one, she asked, her heart swelling. He nodded, but then his face fell slightly. "It's too much, Mommy," he said, his voice small. The premature calculus of poverty already ingrained in him. "Not today, it's not," she said, her voice thick with emotion. She picked up the box, took it to the counter, and swiped the black card. The cashier didn't blink an eye. The transaction was approved in an instant. The look of pure, unadulterated joy on Noah's face as he hugged the enormous box was worth more than any price tag. But Maya's day was not just about fulfilling her son's wishes. As they walked down the street, the reality of her own life and the lives of those around her was never far from her mind. The card in her wallet was a superpower, and she felt an overwhelming responsibility to use it for more than just herself. She stopped at a shoe store and bought Noah 2 pairs of sturdy, well-fitting sneakers to replace his worn-out ones. Then she bought a pair for herself, replacing the cheap, paper-thin flats that had given her blisters and back pain for the last year. It was a practical, sensible purchase, but it felt like the height of luxury. They passed a high-end department store. In the window was a beautiful winter coat, something warm and stylish that she would never have dared to even look at before. She hesitated. She could buy it. She could buy 10 of them. But as she stood there, she saw her elderly neighbor, Mrs. Gable, struggling to haul 2 heavy bags of groceries up the steps of their apartment building. She was a kind woman on a fixed pension who often had to choose between her medication and her food. The image of the coat vanished from Maya's mind. A new, more urgent idea took its place. "Arthur," she said, getting back into the car, "can you take us to a grocery store, the big one over on Elm Street?" Arthur simply nodded. Of course, Miss Linden. Julian Thorne, he would later learn, was not just tracking her purchases. Arthur had been given a secondary, more important instruction to discreetly observe and report on the why behind each transaction. And Maya's day of accounting was just beginning. At the grocery store, Maya didn't just buy a few things for her own empty pantry. She bought a new high-quality walker for Mrs. Gable, one with a seat and handbrakes. Then she walked up to the store manager and, using the black card, paid for a full year of their premium grocery delivery service to be sent to Mrs. Gable's apartment. The manager, stunned, could only stammer his thanks. "Everyone deserves to eat without pain," Maya said, simply thinking of the countless times she'd watched her neighbor struggle. Her next stop was not a spa or a fancy restaurant. It was the public library where she worked on weekends. The children's section was a sad, neglected corner of the building, with frayed books, broken crayons, and computers that were a decade old. She saw the head librarian, a perpetually stressed woman named Maria, trying to tape the spine of a beloved copy of Where the Wild Things Are. Maya walked up to the main desk. "Maria," she said, "if you had an unlimited budget, what would this place need most?" Maria laughed, assuming it was a joke. But seeing the serious expression on Maya's face, she began to dream. New computers, an online learning subscription, a comfortable reading area, a full set of new encyclopedias, and most of all enough new books so that every child who came in could find something magical. Maya listened intently, making a list on her phone. Then she turned to the stunned librarian. "Consider it done," she said. She made an anonymous donation to the library's fund, a sum so large it would revitalize the entire children's wing for years to come. She earmarked a portion of it to go towards a raise for the library's underpaid staff. Her day with Noah was a beautiful tapestry, woven from threads of personal joy and public good. They went to the Science Museum, and she watched her heart full as Noah stared up at the towering skeleton of a Tyrannosaurus Rex. They ate not at a 5-star restaurant, but at Noah's favorite pizza place, where Maya paid the bill and left a tip so large the young waitress was moved to tears. Her final purchase of the day was for herself. She didn't buy jewelry or designer clothes. She bought a new mattress. For 3 years she had been sleeping on a sagging, lumpy mattress that left her back in knots every morning. The simple act of buying a high-quality, comfortable bed felt like the ultimate investment in her own well-being, a recognition that she too was worthy of comfort and rest. As Arthur drove them home, the car filled with Lego's new shoes and the happy exhaustion of a perfect day, Maya felt a deep, profound sense of peace. She had used the card with a mixture of practicality, generosity, and joy. She had paid off her debts, given her son a perfect birthday, and spread the incredible, impossible wealth to the community that was her home. She didn't know if she had passed the strange test set by Mr. Thorne, but she knew in her heart that she had shown him the true worth of a day off. It was a chance to not just fix your own life, but to help mend the small, broken pieces of the world around you. The next morning, Maya woke up in her new bed, feeling more rested than she had in years. The sunlight streaming through her window felt different, softer. The knot of anxiety that had been her constant companion was gone. For the first time, she woke up not to a feeling of dread, but to one of quiet possibility. She had expected the magic to be over. She assumed the black card would be deactivated, the dream concluded. She was just grateful for the brief, beautiful respite. She was preparing to call her bosses and explain her absence, ready to beg for her jobs back when the knock came. It was Arthur. He stood at her door, his expression as serenely professional as ever. "Good morning, Miss Linden," he said. "I trust you slept well." "I did, thank you," she said, her heart starting to beat a little faster. "Arthur, the card. Mr. Thorne. Mr. Thorne was very pleased with your accounting of the day," he said, a genuine smile touching his lips. "He has requested a meeting with you this morning if you are available. He asked that you bring Noah." The request to bring her son was both reassuring and terrifying. This was no longer just about her. She agreed, her mind racing. What could he possibly want now? The destination was not the gleaming Thorne Industries skyscraper downtown. Instead, Arthur drove them to a modest red brick building in a quiet, unassuming neighborhood. The bronze plaque on the door didn't say Thorne Industries. It read, "The Phoenix Foundation." The inside was warm and inviting, more like a community center than a corporate office. The walls were covered in photographs of smiling children, of community gardens, of small local businesses. It felt like a place of hope. Arthur led them to a large corner office. Julian Thorne was standing by the window looking out. He turned as they entered, and the look on his face was not that of a ruthless billionaire, but of a man on the verge of a momentous decision. "Maya, Noah, thank you for coming," he said, his voice softer than she remembered. He knelt down to Noah's level. "I hear you are a big fan of the Tyrannosaurus Rex. I am too." Noah, usually shy with strangers, beamed. "It was the best birthday ever," he said. Julian's gaze shifted to Maya. "Please sit," he said, gesturing to a comfortable sofa. "I owe you an explanation." He began to talk, and the story that unfolded was one of profound, private grief. He told her about his own son, Alex, who was now 25. He and Alex were estranged. "My son Julian," said, his voice, heavy with regret, "sees me as a machine that prints money. He says I was never there for his birthdays. His school plays his life. He says I taught him the price of everything, but the value of nothing. He's not wrong." He explained that his son had left the family business to work for a non-profit overseas, and they hadn't spoken in 6 months. The silence had forced Julian into a painful self-reflection. "I started this company from nothing," he said. "I thought building an empire was my purpose, but my son's words, they haunt me. I've begun to wonder what the point of all this is if the person I love most sees it as a barrier between us. That's why I was in that cafe. I was trying to remember what it felt like to have nothing but a dream." He looked at Maya, his eyes filled with a raw sincerity. "When I asked you that question, I expected you to say $1 million or a new car. I was testing my son's theory that everyone is driven by money. Your answer, it surprised me. And what you did with the opportunity I gave you, it did more than surprise me. It gave me an idea." He walked over to his desk. "The black card wasn't a gift, Maya. It was the most important job interview I have ever conducted. I wasn't just watching your purchases. Arthur was my eyes and ears. He told me about your conversation with the librarian, about your kindness to your neighbor, about the tears in the pizza waitress's eyes. You didn't just take a day off. You invested it. You invested in your son, in your community, in the dignity of others." He paused, taking a deep breath. "This building, the Phoenix Foundation, is a new venture. My son always told me that true change doesn't come from multi-million-dollar grants. It comes from small targeted acts of kindness, a micro-impact fund. I've been looking for someone to run it. Someone who understands that a new mattress can be more valuable than a new car, that a library book can change a life more than a diamond necklace. Someone who knows the true worth of a day off." He looked directly at her, his voice clear and certain. "I'm not offering you charity, Maya. I'm offering you a job. I want you to be the first executive director of the Phoenix Foundation. I want you to take the same compassion, the same integrity, the same wisdom you showed me yesterday, and use it to help hundreds, maybe thousands of other people. The salary will be more than enough to ensure you and Noah never have to worry again. But the work I hope will give you something more." Maya sat in stunned silence, the magnitude of the offer washing over her. A job, a career, a chance to build a future for her son, not just of survival, but of stability and purpose. It was a lifeline thrown to her from a world she never knew existed by a man she had mistaken for just another wealthy customer. "Why me?" She finally whispered the question, born of a lifetime of being overlooked. "Because you're not a philanthropist, Maya Julian," said a sad smile touching his lips. "You're a person. You understand the currency of everyday life. You know that sometimes the biggest investment you can make in someone is to simply take a burden off their shoulders so they have a moment to breathe. My son tried to teach me that for years. It took me watching you for one afternoon to finally understand." She took the job. The life that followed was one she could never have imagined. She moved with Noah into a bright, safe apartment in a good school district. She quit her 3 jobs, her body slowly unlearning the constant ache of exhaustion. But the real transformation was not in her circumstances, but in her work. As the director of the Phoenix Foundation, she was a force of nature. She established programs that were radical in their simplicity. The Day Off Fund, which provided grants to cover lost wages for low-income parents who needed to attend a school meeting or take a sick child to the doctor. The First and Last Fund, which covered the security deposit and first month's rent for families on the verge of homelessness. The Mrs. Gable Grocery Initiative, which partnered with local stores to provide food delivery for the elderly and disabled. She was not just writing checks from an office. She was on the ground in the communities, listening to people's stories, her own past, giving her a unique and powerful empathy. About a year after she started, Julian received a letter. It had an international postmark. It was from his son, Alex. "Dad," the letter began, "I read an article online about the Phoenix Foundation, about its director, a woman named Maya Linden, and her philosophy of micro-impact. It talked about the Day Off Fund. For the first time in a very long time, I heard your voice, but the words sounded like something I would say. Something I always hoped you would understand. Maybe it's not too late for us. I'm coming home next month. I'd like to see you. Maybe I could even meet this Maya Linden." Julian read the letter to Maya in her office, his voice thick with an emotion that was no longer grief, but a fragile, burgeoning joy. Maya looked around her office at the photos on the wall of the families they had helped, of the community library's new children's wing of Noah, smiling on his 9th birthday, this time at a real party with all his friends. Her life had been changed that morning. A black car arrived. But the black card hadn't been the gift. It had been a key. It had unlocked a door, not just for her, but for a heartbroken father to find his way back to his son. The true currency of her actions that day, in the cafe, had never been money. It had been hope, and it had turned out to be the most valuable investment of all. The year that followed was one of profound growth. The Phoenix Foundation, under Maya's leadership, became a model for a new kind of philanthropy, one built on trust, dignity, and rapid targeted intervention. Maya, once a woman running on empty, had found her calling. She was a natural leader, her past struggles giving her an authenticity that resonated deeply with both the people she helped and the donors she inspired. The most significant development, however, was personal. As promised, Julian's son, Alex, came home. The initial reunion between father and son was quiet and tentative, held in the neutral territory of Julian's vast, silent library. Julian had hoped for an immediate breakthrough, a cathartic reconciliation. But the wounds of a lifetime are not so easily healed. Alex Thorne was his father's son in appearance, tall with the same intense, intelligent eyes, but in spirit he was a different man. He was quiet, cynical, and carried himself with the weary air of someone who had been disappointed too many times. He had spent the last several years working in refugee camps, witnessing a level of suffering that made his father's world of corporate philanthropy seem abstract and sterile. When he finally met Maya, It was not with the warmth she had hoped for, but with a cool, polite curiosity. To him, she was a variable in a complex equation he was trying to solve. Had his father truly changed, or had he just found a more sophisticated way to manage his image? "So you're the one," Alex said during their first meeting in the Foundation's office, his gaze sweeping over her as if trying to find the catch. The origin story. It's very compelling. There was an edge to his voice that put Maya on guard. "It's just the truth," she replied simply. "My father deals in truths that suit his narrative," Alex countered, not unkindly, but with a lifetime of experience behind the words. "He collects things companies aren't real estate. It seems he has now begun to collect people. I hope for your sake, you are more than just the latest piece in his collection." The words were a quiet, devastating blow to Maya's hard-won confidence. Was that what she was, a living, breathing symbol of Julian Thorne's redemption? The Waitress success story he could point to in order to prove to his estranged son that he had a soul. The thought was a seed of doubt planted in the fertile ground of her own past insecurities. The tension between Julian and Alex was a constant low hum in the background of the Foundation's work. Alex began to spend time at the office, observing, questioning. He challenged the Foundation's processes, critiqued its reliance on his father's name, and subtly undermined Maya's authority with probing questions in board meetings. He wasn't overtly hostile. He was a skeptic, a ghost at the feast. His very presence, a constant reminder that Julian's transformation was still on trial. Maya found herself caught in the crossfire. She saw the deep, painful love Julian had for his son, and the desperate, wounded need for approval Alex had for his father. She was the bridge between them, a role she had never asked for and didn't know how to play. Her dream job, the source of her stability and purpose, was now intrinsically linked to the unresolved trauma of the Thorne family, and she began to fear that if they couldn't heal their own rift, the entire enterprise of hope she was building could fall into the chasm between them. The breaking point and the ultimate resolution came during the Foundation's first annual fundraising gala. It was a major event, a chance to showcase their work to the city's philanthropic community. Julian was scheduled to give the keynote address to publicly articulate his new vision for the world. Alex had agreed to attend a silent judging presence in the audience. Backstage moments before the program began, the tension was palpable. Julian was nervous, his speech clutched in a trembling hand. He saw this as his last, best chance to prove his sincerity to his son. "He's not going to believe me," Julian murmured to Maya, his usual confidence gone. "He'll just see the money, the fancy ballroom. He'll see it as a performance." Maya looked at the man who had changed her life, seeing not a billionaire, but a frightened father. And then she looked at the speech in his hand, filled with polished rhetoric about impact and legacy. She knew in that moment that he was right. Alex wouldn't be moved by a speech. He needed to hear a story. He needed to hear the truth. "Don't give that speech," she said, her voice firm. Julian looked at her stunned. "What, let me introduce you," she said. "Let me tell them what this is all about. Not the foundation, the beginning." When the time came, Maya walked to the podium. She looked out at the sea of wealthy, influential faces, and in the front row she saw Alex, his arms crossed, his expression a perfect mask of neutrality. She set aside her prepared notes. She didn't talk about statistics or endowments. She told her story. She spoke of the bone-deep weariness of working 3 jobs, of the smell of burnt coffee, of the specific, gut-wrenching pain of telling her 7-year-old son that his birthday was cancelled again. Her voice was quiet, raw, and utterly real. The entire ballroom was captivated, the clinking of glasses and silverware falling silent. There's a specific kind of hopelessness that comes with that life. She said, her gaze finding Alex in the crowd. It's not just about a lack of money. It's about a lack of time, a lack of air. You feel like you're drowning and no one can see you. She then described her encounter with Julian. She didn't paint him as a savior. She described her own sarcastic, bitter response to his question. And she described what she did with the black card. She talked about the joy of buying her son a Lego set, but she also talked about the quiet dignity of buying her neighbor a walker, and the profound satisfaction of funding the children's section of a library. A day off, she concluded, her voice, thick with emotion, turned out to be the most valuable thing in the world. Not because of what I could buy, but because, for one day, I had the power to stop the treadmill. Not just for me, but for others. That is the work of the Phoenix Foundation. We give people a day to catch their breath, a day to fix what's broken, a day to remember that they are seen. She then introduced Julian, who walked to the stage, looking not at the audience but at his son. Alex's mask had finally broken. His eyes were shining with tears. He had spent his life trying to explain this simple human truth to his father, and it had taken this woman with her quiet courage and her painful honesty to finally make him hear it. Later that evening, as the event was winding down, Maya saw them talking by the windows overlooking the city. Julian and Alex. There was no anger, no tension. Just two men, a father and a son, their faces illuminated by the city lights, finding their way back to each other. Alex approached her before he left. "I was wrong about you," he said, his voice filled with a new, genuine respect. "I thought you were a story my dad was telling to make himself feel better. I didn't realize you were the truth." Maya watched them leave together, a quiet understanding passing between them. She realized her purpose had been twofold. Julian had given her a day off, and in return, she had given him back his son. The foundation was no longer just his or hers. It was a shared legacy, built on a foundation of empathy, cemented by a family's healing, and destined to provide a new currency of kindness for years to come. 3 years passed. The Phoenix Foundation, once a fledgling idea, born from a billionaire's crisis of conscience, was now a respected and powerful force for good. The partnership between Maya and Alex Thorne was the engine of its success. Maya's profound empathy and grassroots intuition were perfectly balanced by Alex's pragmatic, on-the-ground experience from his years in international aid. Together they had expanded the Foundation's reach, their shared vision creating something stronger than either of them could have built alone. Julian, in his semi-retirement, watched with a quiet, profound pride. The reconciliation with his son was no longer fragile, but had deepened into a relationship of mutual respect. He had finally learned to listen, and Alex in turn had learned to trust. The family, which had once been a source of pain for both of them, was now a source of strength, with Maya and Noah firmly at its center. One Tuesday morning, an application arrived that threatened to disturb their hard-won peace. Alex was reviewing the weekly requests for the first and last fund when a familiar name leapt out at him. The applicant was a man named Mark Henderson, seeking emergency assistance to avoid eviction. The address of his former place of employment was listed as the Daily Grind. Alex felt a surge of cold fury. He walked into Maya's office, the file in his hand. "You're not going to believe this," he said, his voice tight. "Remember the manager who wouldn't give you the day off for Noah's birthday, the one who told you birthdays happen every year?" Maya's heart went still. The name brought back a flood of memories, the feeling of utter helplessness, the quiet shame of having to plead for a single day. Mr. Henderson," she said, her voice barely a whisper. The one and the same, Alex confirmed his tone, laced with contempt. The cafe went under a year ago, and apparently he's had a string of bad luck and health problems ever since. Now he's about to be kicked out of his apartment. The irony is sickening. Alex tossed the file onto her desk. "I've already marked it for denial. He represents everything we fight, against the callousness, the complete lack of empathy. He doesn't deserve our help." Maya stared at the file. Alex's reaction was visceral protective, and she was grateful for it. A part of her felt the same satisfying sense of cosmic justice. But another deeper part of her felt a familiar, aching pity. She remembered Mr. Henderson not just as a callous manager, but as a tired, stressed man who always seemed to be one step away from a financial crisis of his own. His cruelty had likely been born of his own desperation. She opened the file and read his story. It was a common tale of pride, poor choices, and the brutal speed at which a life can unravel. She looked up at Alex, her expression calm and clear. "We're going to approve the grant," she said. Alex stared at her dumbfounded. "What Maya know? This is the man who pushed you to your breaking point. Helping him feels like a betrayal of your own story." "No," she said gently but firmly. "Denying him would be a betrayal of the Foundation's story. Do you remember the first thing your father told me? He said he wanted to fund people who perform quiet acts of kindness without any expectation of reward. He didn't say we should only help the deserving. He didn't say we should run a background check on people's character." She stood up and walked to the window, looking down at the city below. "The whole point of what we do, Alex, is to be the lifeline for people when they are at their worst. The Foundation isn't here to judge or to settle old scores. It's here to provide a second chance, no questions asked. My personal feelings about Mark Henderson don't matter. His need does." Her words were a perfect distillation of the Foundation's soul. Alex was humbled. He had been reacting out of loyalty and anger, but she was acting out of principle. Her compassion wasn't a fragile thing, reserved only for the grateful and the kind. It was a powerful, unwavering force, strong enough to extend even to a man who had shown her none. They approved the grant through a neutral third-party caseworker. Mr. Henderson never knew. The money that saved him from eviction came from a foundation run by the Waitress he had once so carelessly dismissed. Maya didn't need his gratitude. The act itself was its own reward, a final quiet closing of a painful chapter in her life, and a testament to the woman she had become. 2 more years went by, and the Phoenix Foundation became a national model for effective human-centered philanthropy. Julian Thorne's health began to fail, but he faced his final years with a sense of peace that had eluded him for most of his life. His fortune was no longer a burden, but a tool for grace wielded by the 2 people he trusted most in the world, the son who had come home and the woman who had shown them the way. He passed away quietly on a cool autumn morning, with both Alex and Maya at his side. His death was not a tragedy, but the peaceful conclusion to a life that had finally found its meaning. In the wake of his death, the reading of his will held one final surprise. He had left the entirety of his vast personal fortune and his controlling interest in Thorne Industries, not just to Alex, but to be co-managed by Alex and Maya in a trust with the sole mandate that its profits would perpetually fund and expand the work of the Phoenix Foundation. He had not just left them a legacy, he had made them its permanent guardians. The story's true conclusion, however, doesn't take place in a lawyer's office. It takes place a year later, on a bright, crisp Saturday in October. Maya, Alex, and Noah, now a bright and empathetic teenager, are standing on the observation deck of the Franklin Science Museum. It had become their unbreakable tradition every year on Noah's birthday. They came to see the dinosaurs. Alex was no longer a guest in their lives, but an integral part of their family, a loving and devoted uncle to Noah. "You know," Noah said, looking at his mum, "I was talking to one of the new applicants for the Day Off Fund yesterday. She's a single mum, a nurse. Her daughter has a big gymnastics competition on Saturday, and she was going to have to miss it because she couldn't get her shift covered." Noah had started volunteering for the foundation, reading initial applications. His insight born of his own experience was invaluable. "We approved it, of course," Noah continued with a smile. She cried on the phone. She said it was the best gift anyone had ever given her. Maya looked at her son, his face alight with the joy of helping someone else. She saw the full, beautiful circle of her life in that moment. The single desperate wish she had made in a dingy cafe years ago was now a self-perpetuating engine of compassion, its gears now turned by the next generation. She felt a hand on her shoulder and turned to see Alex, his eyes also on Noah. "He would be so proud," Alex said, quietly referring to his father. "He spent his whole life thinking about what he would leave me. He never understood that the real inheritance isn't what you leave to someone. It's what you build with them." Maya looked at her son now, nearly a man, and at Alex, the son who had come home to find a new kind of family. She thought of the black card, the impossible key that had opened the first door. It hadn't just bought her a day, it had bought her a future, a purpose, and a family forged in the fires of kindness. Julian Thorne's true inheritance wasn't his billions. It was this story, this family, this quiet, profound understanding that the most valuable thing one person can ever give another is the simple, priceless, and transformative gift of a single day. Maya Linden's story is a powerful reminder that our true worth isn't measured by our job title or our bank account, but by the choices we make when we think no one is watching. The black card wasn't a prize. It was a test, a key that unlocked the incredible compassion and integrity she already possessed. It showed a man who had lost his way that the greatest investments are not in stocks and bonds, but in people. It's a profound lesson that a single day off can truly be worth a lifetime of second chances for more than just one person. If you were inspired by Maya's journey from exhaustion to empowerment, please let us know by hitting that like button. Share this video to spread the message that small acts of kindness have immense value, and be sure to subscribe for more unforgettable stories. In the comments below, we'd love to hear from you. If you were given the same challenge, what's the very first thing you would do? Thank you for watching.